Hello everyone, my name is Clantis and welcome to the Iron Bars, my true crime YouTube channel. So today's case is a very fresh case which still has South Africans in shock. This is a story of an auntie who murders her nephew and buries him in the yard before reporting him missing. This is the story of Neo Mahlangu. As I've mentioned, that this case is still very fresh and most of the details are still a bit sketchy. However, so I thought, let me tell the story of a 16-year-old boy who was murdered by his aunt for accusing him of stealing her money. So about the 19th of March 2022, Neo Mahlangu went to his aunt in the East Rand of Johannesburg in a township called Tsakane to visit his aunt Andile Mthembu with her 14-year-old boy. So during school holidays, Neo Mahlangu enjoyed going to his aunt's place in Tsakane because he was quite close to his 14-year-old cousin, who happens to be Andile Mthembu's son. However, this particular visit was a little bit different because it was sanctioned by his mother, who asked Andile if she could please take care of Neo because Neo was starting to act up. Basically, adolescence was starting to kick in and he started smoking and becoming naughty, and he was even accused by his own parents that he started to take drugs. So Andile felt that because she has a stricter hand, she would definitely take care of him and probably beat the drugs out of him. It is also clear that Neo enjoyed going to Tsakane to visit Andile and her 14-year-old son because there was never problems in all the years that he has gone there during holidays, sometimes during the weekends, because he truly enjoyed being with his aunt. And it's also clear that Andile Mthembu was fond of Neo, hence she allowed him to come and visit at Tsakane. So Andile Mthembu was born on the 21st of December 1986, making her a Sagittarius and a 36-year-old woman. From what I could gather, she comes from the province of KwaZulu-Natal, or KZN as we call it here in South Africa. So Andile Mthembu is described by her neighbors as well as people that know her that she is quiet, she kept to herself, she never left the house, and she never minded anybody's business. All she did was to mind her own business and just do whatever it is that she did in her house. The neighbors said they hardly ever knew her. Sometimes she would not even greet them when she walks down the streets. That is something that is so un-South African, but anyways, different strokes for different folks, I guess. So as I've mentioned earlier, that on the 19th of March 2022, Neo's mother sends Neo to visit his aunt Andile so that he could get away from the boys that were influencing him in smoking as well as taking drugs. She was quite afraid for her son and thought that he was going to be safe in the hands of Andile during the school holidays. So here in South Africa, around March, April, it is the school holiday, which we call it first term. These school holidays also includes the Easter holidays before kids return to school a week after the Easter. So it was perfect timing for Neo to visit his aunt in Tsakane so that he'll be far away from the group of boys that are introducing him to this smoking and also drugs. So Andile agreed that Neo should come over to her house and she will make sure that he stays away from any kind of drug or even cigarettes. Andile Mthembu was known to be a no-nonsense parent who was not shy of whipping a child when it's out of line. So on or about the 20th or the 22nd of March, Andile discovers that her money was missing in the house, and she knew exactly who was the culprit because her 14-year-old son wouldn't dare steal money from her. So it was clear to her that it was Neo who took the money. So this is when Andile calls her 14-year-old son to come and pin down Neo while she was busy beating him up for stealing her money. Indeed, her 14-year-old son pinned Neo down. So this is when Andile began to beat Neo with a stick while filming the entire ordeal. While Andile was busy beating Neo, she kept asking him, "Who stole my money? You stole my money. Confess that you stole my money. Of course, Neo, realizing that the beating was not stopping, he ended up confessing that indeed he is responsible in stealing Andile's money. And this is when Andile got even more angrier and started becoming aggressive while she was busy beating Neo. She kept beating Neo to a point where Neo was begging for his life. And he continued to say, yes, I took the money and I am sorry. While beating Neo, Neo began to pray, asking God to save his life. When Andile heard Neo praying while she was beating him, she encouraged him to pray some more and ask God to forgive you for stealing my money, and also to ask God to forgive you for doing drugs. Neo kept asking his 14-year-old cousin to ask his mother to stop. She is killing me. But Andile would not stop, to a point where Neo went limp. He passed on while being beaten by his aunt. Please do forgive me for not mentioning this is allegations, and I have not been using the word allegedly because the matter is still in court, and thus far the court of law has not made any findings yet. So I do apologize for not having used the word allegedly so far. So anyways, these are allegations thus far, even though Andile Mthembu has confessed to the court that indeed she is responsible for the death of her nephew. So about the 24th of March 2022, Andile Mthembu went to the police station to report Neo as a missing person. And indeed, the police wasted no time in opening a case of a missing child. And as a result, they went out searching for Neo. However, when the neighbors found out that Neo was missing, they started going like, but hang on a minute. Just a few days ago, Andile had hired a group of men to dig a big hole about 6 meters wide and 6 feet long. She said that the hole was to install a water tank, considering that in Tsakane sometimes they struggled with water. So the men, unsuspecting, they dug up the hole 6 meter wide and 6 feet long. So the neighbors did witness a hole being dug in the backyard of Andile Mthembu's house. They were also baffled at the fact that why would Andile be digging a hole in a house that she does not own but rents? However, they were even more baffled when they discovered the following day that the hole was covered, but there was no water tank. So while the police were busy searching for Neo Mahlangu, who is considered as a missing person, the 14-year-old son of Andile Mthembu was on the phone calling his uncle to tell him about everything that has transpired in the house between him, his mother, and Neo. The uncle was like, are you sure what you are talking about? This is when the 14-year-old boy sent pictures to his uncle, and the uncle was quite shocked at what he saw because Neo's body was bruised up while he lay there dead. And this is when the uncle called the police to let them know where they were going to find Neo's body. Indeed, the police wasted no time and went to Andile Mthembu's house in Tsakane, and indeed they saw in the backyard that there was a freshly dug out space, and they just knew what they were going to find in there. So a forensic team was called to start excavating and exhuming whatever that was in that hole. And as they dug up, indeed they came across a black plastic bag wrapped inside something that looked like a body. And indeed, when they opened the plastic, it was the bruised body of Neo Mahlangu. Neo Mahlangu is no longer a missing person. He is now murdered. And the police knew at that very moment they had an investigation on their hands. And that is when they placed Andile Mthembu together with her 14-year-old son under arrest and took them to the police station. So because the arrest took place on a Friday, Andile and her 14-year-old boy could not be taken to court. Therefore, they were going to sleep in the cells until the following Monday before they greeted a magistrate. However, it turns out that the charge sheet was only of Andile Mthembu. She was charged with murder, defeating the ends of justice, and perjury. Her 14-year-old boy was not charged with anything. So apparently there is a video that is in the possession of the court that was taken by Andile Mthembu while she was busy beating Neo. And in this video, it shows Andile beating Neo with a stick, despite the fact that Neo was confessing to stealing her money, as well as begging her to stop because she was killing him. The video is quite shocking and graphic and could not be played in any medium because number one, it involves a minor, and number two, the 14-year-old boy cannot be named, as well as his pictures circulating anywhere in South Africa. When Andile Mthembu attended court on the 1st of April 2022, she was in camera because this matter involved a minor. So the news broke on the 1st of April 2022, and South Africa was gripped in shock after hearing of what had happened to a 16-year-old boy murdered by his own aunt. Neo's parents and siblings cannot understand what had happened. All they could say is, "We have no words, we are speechless. We still want to know, but we're not sure how to ask what had happened to Neo." All they had asked Andile to do was to take care of Neo because he was starting to act out and he was starting to experiment with drugs and smoking. That is all they wanted out of her, not to kill him. What confuses Neo's parents is the fact that Neo has been going to Andile Mthembu's house all these years and they have never had any kind of misunderstanding, let alone Andile beating up Neo for any reason for that matter. So they could not understand why she did what she did, despite the fact that she's already said Neo has stolen money from her, but they don't understand why murder him. So when the media spoke to some family members of Neo, they all said everything is in God's hand. Nothing can change now and nothing will bring Neo back. All they are waiting for is reasons as to why this had happened to Neo. When the media questioned the community members, they all said Andile was very quiet. She kept to herself. However, there were suspicions that she was selling drugs and also in the business of hijacking houses. When I heard that, I was like, what is hijacking houses? I've never heard of that before. So I looked a little bit further and I discovered that people could actually sell your house without you knowing about it. I don't know where they get the papers from, particularly the title deed. So apparently that's what she does. You one day sitting in your house and people will be moving in with their furniture and you're like, what's happening? They will tell you they bought the house. So apparently that's the type of business that Andile Mthembu was in, because outside of her house there will be lots of cars of men that were unidentified. They did not know what these men were doing at her house. So one young man came forward and told the media that actually 1 year ago, Andile Mthembu had approached him and recruited him to sell drugs for her. Which is a bit confusing for me, with the fact that Neo was sent by his parents to Andile's house to keep him away from boys that were introducing him to drugs, only to send him to a drug den. To me, that did not make sense. It's either those are false accusations or it is true. And if it is true, then it's possible that Andile did not want her nephew to be involved in drugs. And that is why she needed to keep an eye on him. So like I mentioned, on the 1st of April 2022, Andile Mthembu and her 14-year-old son appeared in court. There, she had the opportunity to apply for bail, but she decided to abandon her bail application because she was afraid if she was granted bail, she was going to go to a very angry community for the things that she has done to Neo. Secondly, for bringing a dark cloud over the community. So she thought, it's best that I remain in prison, not out there, because the community will definitely deal with me. However, the 14-year-old boy was sent home in the care of other relatives. So it is unclear if the NPA, which is the National Prosecuting Authority, are going to charge the 14-year-old boy with anything because of his involvement in the murder of Neo. Unfortunately, the public was also not allowed in court. As I've mentioned earlier, this matter involves minor children, and therefore the public is not allowed in court. The entire proceedings was held in camera. In the same court appearance, this is when Andile Mthembu confessed to killing her nephew. So the case was then postponed to the 12th of April 2022 for investigations of defeating the ends of justice, murder, as well as perjury. So what are my thoughts about this case? So this is what I think is going to happen. On the 12th of April 2022, Andile Mthembu's case is going to be transferred to the Regional Court of Tsakane Magistrates Court, where a mitigation of sentence is going to be held as well as sentencing, considering the fact that she did confess. Therefore, there is not going to be a trial. Unless Andile Mthembu changes her story together with her guilty plea, then a trial is going to be held. So what are my predictions about this case? I believe that Andile Mthembu is not going to be found guilty of murder, but of culpable homicide. In the USA, you call it manslaughter, because there was no intention in the killing of Andile. All that this woman was doing to Andile was to discipline him without realizing that she was abusing him as well as killing him in the process. Another thing that I also want to say in this video is that corporal punishment in South Africa was abolished in 1996 by the Constitution of the Republic, and as a result, schools, parents, guardians, and legal guardians could not beat a child because that is considered as abuse or child abuse. Currently, parents, teachers, and any adult is quite afraid to touch a child who seems to be naughty or getting out of hand because of the law. I don't think South Africans have figured it out yet how to deal with naughty kids, because as a result of that, many of these kids do get out of hand. Some become criminals, others become drug addicts, some drop out of school simply because they know that their parents cannot touch them, or teachers for that matter can touch them. So everybody is like walking on eggshells when it comes to the discipline of children. However, there are those parents who say, in my house is a dictatorship, there's no democracy. I will beat the living daylight out of you if you are going to be naughty under my roof. My mom was one of those people. So culpable homicide in South Africa is usually a suspended sentence of about 5 to 10 years, depending on the circumstances around the case. So in this case, I strongly believe that Andile Mthembu is going to be found guilty of culpable homicide, and she will be sentenced to 5 years, which are going to be suspended either for 5 or 10 years. I do believe that she is also going to be found guilty of perjury, which carries about 2 years imprisonment. She will also be found guilty of defeating the ends of justice, which also carries a prison term of 5 years. So all in all, I think Andile Mthembu will be sentenced to about 9 to 12 years imprisonment. As for Andile's 14-year-old boy, I doubt that he is going to be charged with anything. However, the court will indeed order that he goes for psychological counseling as well as evaluation, because he did witness the killing of his cousin, probably his favorite cousin. Reason being, he was forced by his mother to pin down Neo while she was busy beating him. It was not like voluntarily. Secondly, this 14-year-old boy showed remorse and guilt by the fact that he called his uncle and let him know what was going on. So I just hope that this 14-year-old boy will get all the help that he needs. I hope he becomes an upstanding member of society and a contributing member of the community. I hope that he takes heart with the fact that without him, Neo's body would not have been found. I hope he gets to forgive himself as well as his mother so that he can move on with life. Well, that is it, guys, with the case of an auntie who murders and buries her nephew in the yard before reporting him missing. Neo Mahlangu. Please do leave me a comment down below and let me know what you think of this case. Do you think Andile Mthembu intentionally killed her nephew or it was an accident? Please like this video and also share it far and wide. And thank you for watching. I will see you next time with a new true crime story. Goodbye.